So, a Prime Minister that doesn't want to work beyond 6 o'clock on a Friday. Annabel, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
So, I don't think this is going to play at all, is it? I mean, you can't possibly be Prime Minister if you say, sorry, guys, I'm knocking off at 6 o'clock, so any other business, you know, catch me tomorrow or Monday.
Well, of course, he did caveat it by saying there will be a few exceptions. But what exceptions will those be, Mike? Because he's going to be leading our country. And I imagine there will be many occasions on which he won't be able to clock off at 6 p.m. on a Friday evening to have a curry with his wife or sit down and watch Netflix with his children or see them in their various sporting activities. Just as many people up and down the country are unable to do so on a Friday. And I think that's quite an important point, given that the BMA are striking, or junior doctors are striking this week. The BMA has made very clear that there may be further industrial action throughout the summer until they can negotiate a deal that they think is reasonable for their members. Well, how can Keir Starmer convince us that he's going to take, a tough line with those junior doctors, as indeed the Conservative Party has done, if he himself is talking about work-life balance and the importance of particular working conditions? These are words, I think, that will come back to haunt Keir Starmer. This is his second major misstep by my calculations during this election campaign, after he sought to define what a working person is. And ultimately ended up saying that it's people who use public services and don't have any savings. So apparently, unless you're on the brink of destitution or using NHS and so on, then you're not defined in his eyes as a working person. I think perhaps he was trying to present himself as a modern family man. But, how many times, Mike, have we heard Keir Starmer talk about putting the country first and his duty to the country? You think seem to be pretty inconsistent.
Well, this is the trouble, isn't it? Because he keeps mentioning the word service, and the only person I've ever heard using that word as much as he does is Meghan Markle. And when you think of Meghan Markle and service and all of the things that she did for the country, you think, well, that's not a great sort of example to use, is it? And you're right, clearly you don't have to have meetings all the time. You don't have to schedule meetings all the time. But one of the things about running the country, one of the things about being in government, is that you never know what you're going to be doing probably from one day to the next, because it keeps getting interrupted by events.
Exactly. He's got no clue what engagements and commitments he's going to have. He may not even know whether he'll be in London or indeed in the UK, such is the nature of the role that he is currently auditioning for. Let's not forget Margaret Thatcher famously only got 4 hours sleep a night, and she did a very good job of running the country. There is this idea among unions and people on the left at the moment that you will be more productive if you're solely working on your own terms. So, if you have a 4-day week or a right to disconnect or a right to work remotely or flexibly, somehow you're going to be more productive. But that is incompatible with our current productivity levels, Mike, and the fact that, all right, correlation is not causation, but it does seem that we are stagnating at a time when workers, employees are getting more and more entitlements. And yet the Labour Party want to bring in even more. So they want that right to request flexible work on day one of a new job, where the onus will then be on employers to explain why they might not grant that request. Of course, we have got unions pushing for things like a 4-day week. Angela Rayner has said that she thinks that bosses shouldn't be able to contact their staff out of hours. So essentially, you clock off at 5 p.m. and there'd be a law saying that you couldn't be contacted until 9 o'clock the following morning. And you do wonder whether this is going to be beneficial to the businesses that people are working for. And of course, workers do need protections, but they already have many of those. And we do seem to be piling more and more regulations and more burdens onto businesses with this idea that they ultimately exist for the well-being of the staff who work for them, rather than that they exist to create products and services that people want to buy, and in so doing create jobs and create wealth and pay taxes and make an enormous contribution to the country. And we're just drifting so far away from that mindset now.
And also, it's nothing to do with government either. I mean, I've been very concerned over the last sort of 14 years in a way, and even maybe before that when Tony Blair and Gordon Brown were in, that the government has kind of edged further and further into everybody's life. There's a far bigger now body of people who work for the government, a huge number of people working in the public sector compared to what used to be the case 20 years ago. And it's not sustainable, is it? And we don't want so many people telling us what to do all the time.
No, I mean, we are gradually shrinking the productive side of our economy in order to support the less productive side of our economy. And of course, we need basic public services. We do need a welfare state. We need to be providing a safety net to the most vulnerable to ensure that they're cushioned from extreme hardship. But we have strayed very far from that core principle, I think, into one where, as you say, the government is meddling and interfering in ever more areas of our lives. Its tentacles are expanding into every area really of our aspect of our lives, and limiting ordinary men, women, and businesses room for maneuver in the process. And much of it is done with the best of intentions, but that's how you find yourself on the road to serfdom, Mike. It's the benign state interfering increasingly in our lives and trying to take on more and more responsibility for managing and running our economy. And we all know ultimately how that ends. And what's really interesting is that over the last few weeks, we've seen a lot of polls that suggest people would rather have higher taxes to fund better public services. But then you consider that government spending as a proportion of GDP is set to reach record highs. We're going to have the highest tax burden in 7 decades. And few people seem to wonder whether more money can really be the solution, whether an ever-growing state is actually going to lead to better public services. And I think the problem, as you've stressed, is that the government is simply trying to do too much. We can debate whether it needs to be involved in healthcare, but currently we have a national healthcare service that's on its knees. And we want money to go towards education sector and, as I say, a welfare state. But do we really need the government to be subsidising something like childcare? Do we really need to have a Department for Culture, Media and Sport? There are massive areas of government spending that few people have really stopped to question whether they actually are necessary and whether that money could be better diverted towards other parts of government spending.
Yeah, absolutely right. Annabel, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Annabel, the Deputy Comment Editor of The Telegraph, on the news that Keir Starmer says that he won't work beyond 6 o'clock on a Friday because he wants to spend time with his kids. Rishi Sunak, of course, has got kids as well. He works pretty much whenever he can, but it may well be that come Friday, he'll be able to take lots of time off and do whatever the heck he likes.